enough to share. He came here, we thought, for his grandson's wedding, which of course he did celebrate, but we've been running him ragged ever since. Every moment he's speaking in the girls' school, in the boys' school, and so on. So we're honored to have him here. We're going to ask for everybody to hold any questions, comments, queries, or other stories. And of course, the cell phone rule is in full force. Any cell phone violations will be $5. We want to thank our friend Rick, who sponsored this morning's breakfast. Shayach to you. And it should be a schus for all of Klal Yisrael and for all of Am Yisrael. So we'll ask everybody to please hold any questions or comments until the very end. And we'll ask Rabbi Lew to share. Are you more comfortable to stand? We can get you to stand. Is that more comfortable?
Not really.
You don't understand? You want to stand up?
Yeah, but can I just?
You do whatever you want.
What about disagreeing with something you just said?
Well, fine.
I want to say, stories you can wait till the end, but questions you can interrupt, and I would like you to, because then it becomes interactive, and we're all stakeholders, and everybody can ask the question. Giving a speech, that for this moment it's me. Now we're talking about Pesach. This is also the week of the birthday of the Rebbe. Pesach is also a birthday. The Prophet Ezekiel, chapter 16, 17, gives a graphic description of childbirth and child development as a paradigm for the Jewish people being released from Egypt and our progress. And in fact, we actually quote from it in the Haggadah on the night of Pesach, next Monday night in Yitzhak Hashem, next week. And I have a personal custom that I took on myself, that I took it on myself 30 years ago, just at Gimel Tammuz. I read every day letters of the Rebbe. From these 39 volumes and 33 volumes of the Rebbe's letters, and I try to read a few pages every day since then, and I find it fascinating. This week I'm about to start from the beginning, 5th time around. Wow. And the letter that I read this morning, I said to myself, how are you going to start introducing what Pesach means? Some kind of an inner meaning of Pesach. And I said, I was doing the Igros, these letters, and I saw a letter from the Rebbe explaining to a couple who were having difficulties in relationship. And he was talking about Shalom Bayis, talking about harmony and being on the same page in the home, and how they can. The couple both wrote to the Rebbe together for advice, because they were actually not parallel in their spiritual development. One was more from than the other, wanted more, one wanted less. So I said to myself, I'm going to tell you a story about relationships. About 10 years ago, I was in Argentina, speaking to a group of young girls who were all Balas Tshuva, all girls who had taken the step to become frum, in their 20s probably, Friday night. And I asked them for questions. I said I wanted to be interactive. They wrote out the questions before Shabbos. The one girl said, 5 years ago, I became frum. And I was excited, I was on fire, I was enthusiastic. I was filled with the relationship and with the love of Hashem. Now, 5 years later, I'm still 100% frum, but it's pretty, to a certain extent, perfunctory, or to a certain extent, it's somehow the passion seems to have subsided. What can you tell me about that? And what I said to her, and to that group of maybe 100 girls, I said, imagine a couple that got married, and they're passionately in love. He's going out to work, they're phoning each other every hour, and they can't stop talking to each other, well, what do you do now? Where are you going now? Are they in love? Definitely yes. I said, now, fast forward a couple, 65-year-olds. And they're sitting on a November afternoon in the room, and he's reading a book quietly, and she's knitting some scarf for her granddaughter or something. And they're sitting there for 2 hours, drizzling outside. Are they in love? Without a word going between them. Are they in love? Now, which of these loves is more legitimate?
The second one.
The answer is
Both.
the second one, with a little bit more, and the first. And the other 5,000 that went in between.
It's a continuum. It's a continuum.
Yes, and it changes its nature, its face. There's something. There's an aspect of spontaneity in love in a relationship, and there's also an aspect of commitment. And they don't necessarily always come together with a person. There are moments when you feel the spontaneity. And there's a sense in which the spontaneity is, in a sense, an expression also of self-love. It makes me feel good. And I express it by phoning up, and by cuddling, and by this or that, and this, and not wanting to be apart from each other any moment. And the other one is commitment. In that sense, it is deeper. It doesn't mean that when the spontaneity and the external expression of it, it doesn't mean that there's no commitment there. But ultimately, the commitment, which is the manifestation of an inner love. And that's what Pesach is. That's what Yetzias Mitzrayim is. It's a commitment to God, even at a moment when it means I have to change my nature. I have to do something, even though at this moment I'm not feeling it. I'll tell you another story, personal story. This was 1.5 years ago. Unfortunately, I sat Shiva, and I met somebody there, some relative of a relative, and it was in New York, and we agreed that when he said he has a question, he's going to phone me to England. So far he's phoned me back this 1.5 years, but it was a fantastic conversation. He phoned me and he said he's been studying it was just before Rosh Hashanah in Elul, the month of Elul. He's a Flatbush person, and an Orthodox Jew, not Chabad. And he was preparing, and he saw in the Machzor, in the prayers of the high holidays, reference to a Gemara, to a Talmudic discussion between the house of Bais Hillel and Bais Shammai, the school of Hillel, school of Shammai, that they spent 2.5 years debating. Was it better for a person to have been born, or would it have been better not to have been born? It's interesting that the Gemara does not say specifically who says which opinion. The Rebbe shows a proof that who it was in a talk. And at the end of 2.5 years, they came to the conclusion it would be better not to be born. But now that you're born, take your life seriously. Like, it doesn't make the most of it. It says, Yifashmesh b'maisav, or b'mashmesh. It says, look into your deeds. See what you can do. And this guy had a question. You know what his question was? He had one question. He phoned me on his way to work from Flatbush to New Jersey. The question was, what took them 2.5 years? I said, and like 2.5 seconds. This is my view, this is your view. 2.5 minutes, 2.5 hours, 2.5 days, 2.5 weeks, okay. What is there to talk about in the question of is it good to be born or not good to be born? And I want to share with you, won't take me 2.5 years, it can take me a bit more than 2.5 minutes. And what I said to him is, number one, a point which is pointed out, in, the Kutei Torah by the Alter Rebbe, by the first Chabad Rebbe. The Gemara does not say, is it tov, is it good to be born? The Alter Rebbe says, chas v'sholom, to question that. God forbid to even question whether it's good or not. Because God did it. And you know something, it doesn't say in the Torah, but it does say in the Torah, in the first chapter, Vayar Elokim es kol asher asa. So God saw everything that He created, v'hinei tov mod, it was very good. So you gotta say it's good. Of course it's good. And the first mitzvah of the Torah is to have children. And after October the 7th, it becomes even a stronger mitzvah. As many, I tell people, one more than you planned. That's at least one more than you planned. And if the Torah tells us to have children or to encourage others to have children, to help support people who need it, even though they cannot afford it, whatever it is, then it must be good. The first mitzvah, be fruitful, a mother cannot be something which is not good. The word in the Gemara is it noach la'adam shanivra? Is it comfortable? Is it easy? You say in Israel, in modern Hebrew, you say nochiyut means comfort. Ezor nochiyut means comfort zone. Noach means, is it comfortable to be born or not? And that is 2.5 years of discussion about it. It's not so far-fetched. Because it has to do with relationships. It has to do with, let's talk about human relationships. You have someone who's a friend. I have a brother, a different brother, my youngest brother. He's 79 years old, by the way. and he came to England about 50 years ago, so he was about in his late 20s, and I was then in my late 30s, middle 30s, whatever. He came, and he's a very charismatic guy, and he was like, he was living in Staten Island for 40 years, and when the rabbi was not there for Shabbos, he gave the sermon, for example. That's the kind of person, and always there at the minyan. He'd be here right now, he'd have something interesting to say. But I asked him a question, like an older brother to a kid brother. Well, in the course of the 5 days that they were here, he and his wife, I said, do you have friends? And that would seem like a funny question to a guy like that who's very popular. And he said, I've got a lot of friends, he says, but depends how you define a friend. If you mean that at 3 o'clock in the morning I have a crisis, I feel okay to call that person up and ask them to help me, 1, maybe 2, maximum 3. And I told this to the guy on the phone. I said, what does it mean? What does it mean having a relationship with someone? Is it comfortable? If it's comfortable, that's not that much of a relationship. It's more one way. When it's comfortable, I'm there. When it's not so comfortable, then, I'm looking for something else. That's not the whole Pesach is commitment. Even when it's not comfortable. even when the passion is not there at that moment. The moment that comes, it goes, whatever it is. It means struggling with yourself. A person comfortable is to lie down in your bed and sleep and snooze away for 8 hours, uninterrupted. Uncomfortable is 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody calls you up and says, hey guy, I need you to talk to me or to help me change a flat tire or to bail me out, whatever it is. So what happens at that moment? At that moment, a person, the inner self, the inner character, the inner goodness begins to dominate, and you say, look, and usually when people call you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, or even 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's when it's least convenient for you. Just before an important meeting, or just after a power cut, or whatever it is. All different types of things that happen. But the sense of duty says, you know what? I have to do it because of the friendship, and therefore I go to something which is not comfortable. That's 2 levels. One level is sleeping. One level is a sense of duty. But I believe there's a 3rd level. The 3rd level is being happy that this person whom I love and who I feel for has me to be able to help them or to be there for them, just to listen to them. I'm here to listen, even if it's 3 in the morning. So it's a development of a relationship. It consists of many different aspects and many different angles in what you're talking about. There's the old story in the prophets, in the Navi. The story with King David versus Shaul with Shmuel, the prophet. And God told him to do this. And he decided, that he decided on what's beautiful. Let's have some, let's have a humanitarian ceasefire for a moment. He decided what looks like a good, nice, wonderful thing.
Reasonable.
And because of that, Agag, the king that he didn't kill, was able to have relations with a woman, and from that was born, eventually, a descendant was Haman, who wanted to wipe out the Jewish people. And Shmuel said, you don't have the perspective, Hashem does. So Pesach is commitment. It means going out of limitations. It's not about me. You know something? Every step that I take in improving my Yiddishkeit, my thought processes, my speech, my actions, every step I take is going to enhance me as a person. Besides the heavenly reward in 120 years. Just now on this world, it's a great life. But that's not what it's about. It's about the will of God. And weighing these types of things, these 2 moods of, on the one hand, passion, wanting to become closer to God, and on the other hand, saying, God needs me now to do a mitzvah. And it's not necessarily what I am in the mood to do. And it's not necessarily something which my passion would cater for at this moment. But that's the commitment. And each of these loves is a love. When Mashiach comes, it's written in the prophet Micha that just as in the days that you went out from Egypt, God says, I will show him wonders. And in the Hasidic teachings, it asks the question, if the greatest of the great is the time to come when Mashiach comes, what do you mean worry about Mashiach? It's like a very a child, a beginning stage of our development, of our relationship with Hashem. And the answer that is given, one of the answers, is that there is an advantage in going out from Egypt, where you're struggling with yourself, but doing what God wants, over even the miracles of that time. Of course, the miracles then are going to be exponentially greater than the miracles of going out of Egypt. The sea split, that's the greatest miracle that we talk about. But the sea splitting in the future is going to be a miracle compared to the sea splitting today, in the 3,300 years ago. Great miracle. But there's still an advantage in today. The advantage in today is that today we are showing, we are expressing, not showing it to someone else, we are feeling, experiencing a commitment which far surpasses anything that is going to be then, because then it's going to be natural for me. It's going to be Noach. It's going to be comfortable. That's going to be the comfort zone. Serving God. The whole world will be aligned in harmony. Everything's going to be just as Hashem wanted it to be. And it's going to be the most natural thing. And all the Jews and all the non-Jews and all the enemies suddenly going to have a change and suddenly realize, what are we doing here? It's great, but it's going to become the natural state of affairs. And today, it requires a commitment, it's called a bittul, a selflessness, giving yourself over to the other. It's what you do for the other person. That's a deeper expression of the love for them, but also for yourself. It makes you into a different person. Giving it. Knowing where the principles, working it through. I told the guy, we had a conversation, I said, he says, I'm on my way to work, that's why I know where he was going. I said, how far is that? He said, it's 1 hour drive from Flatbush, Brooklyn, to New Jersey. So at one stage I said to him, by the way, do you do the drive on Sundays? He said, what are you talking about? I don't work on Sundays. I said, why don't you go there? I mean, you're spending 2 hours every single day doing it. Why don't you do it on Sunday? I said, you're doing it, and you're happy that you're employed to go there because you're doing it for your family. It's not the thing you would like to do. On your day off, that's not what you're going to do. It means the idea of training oneself that my first reaction is, what does God want me to do in this situation? Forget about what happened, forget about what's going on. This moment, what does Hashem want from me? That is what life is about. Now I want to tell you another story. I want to go into the Haggadah. Rabbi Epstein says, give him a little, at least one insight into the Haggadah. And we'll try to put all the pieces together. This happened 3 years ago, on the day before Erev Pesach. Now, if you remember back 3 years ago, I'll tell you 2 things about it. Number one, it was the time of COVID restrictions. It wasn't lockdown, but you had to be careful. And we had minyanim with distancing, and the other thing is that Pesach, the first Seder was on Motzei Shabbos, on a Saturday night that year. So this was Friday. And I'd been out to buy pita bread, because it doesn't crumble, in order to use it on Shabbos. And it had to be motzi, not mazonos, etc., etc. And I went to the mikveh, and I was home, but we had no help at home at that time, for another half a year. So it's just my wife and I, 2 young people, lived together, peeling potato, well, she did 99% of the work. Normally, at least I can get out of the house and let her get on with it. Anyway, so here was me, peeling potatoes, mopping the floors. I don't remember what was it. And this is the last minute. It's Friday afternoon. Just about, seeing, we got to get everything ready. It's just the 2 of us here now. It's a 3-day Yom Tov in effect. Because there's Shabbos and then there's 2 days of Pesach. And then grinding and then the peeling and the mopping. The phone rings. Now, I don't know why I had the number in my system there. And it's a man who is in America. He's a teacher of teenage boys of 13, about 7th, 8th grade teacher. I know that because once I spoke, I was brought out to speak at that time. I visited a class, and I went to his class. I was very impressed with his sensitivity about each kid. This guy, it's the only time he ever called me up, before or since. And he sounded agitated. He said, maybe you can help me, I've got a problem. A problem 2 hours before Pesach. Okay, for him it was 7 hours before, whatever. I said, what's the problem? He said, I have a problem with the Haggadah. I can't go into Pesach. The Haggadah is your problem? He says, yeah, the 4 sons. The Russia, the wicked son. And he screams. To me it sounded like a screaming of Rome. It was up with feeling. Why give him a label? Later on in the Yom Tov, I was thinking it over. I got emotional in myself that this is what bothers this guy. And at Pesach, why do you give him a label? Why call him a Russia? Why pronounce him with a negative title? And he said, I know that it was only in Egypt that he had no hope. The Rebbe says in Ezekiel, he's a person who is saturated with the teachings of the Rebbe. And that in the time to come, if he were there in Egypt, he would not have been redeemed. But when Mashiach comes, everyone will be redeemed. Even the people who seem on the surface to be negative, the real inner self is going to come out. I know that. I know that. And I know what it says, this and that, about that very passage. But why give him a label? And I had to think fast. Especially, I wanted to get on with it. So I said to him that really the answer is, Haggadah does not say there are 4 sons, Chacham, Rasha, Tam, Sheni, Elisha, wise, wicked, simple, and the one that doesn't even know how to ask. That's not what it says. It says Echad Chacham, the Echad Rasha, the Echad Tam, the Echad Sheni, Elisha. One is wise, one is wicked, one is simple, and one is the one that doesn't know how to ask. I said the first word of that statement is an answer to your question. We do not define him. We do not label him as a Rasha. We label him as Echad. You are one, and you are a manifestation of the one God, which is the essence of your soul. Just like the Chacham is Echad, the Rasha is Echad, everyone is Echad. Why does it say Rasha? It's saying you, who in your own self-image think that you are a lost case. You think that you're out of the pale. Mr. Rasha, you should know, before I even called you that name, you're Echad. No, that's what your real essence is. It's emphasizing that. It's telling you that. And it's telling, this comes from a talk of the Rebbe, based on a talk of the previous Rebbe, Yosef Yitzchak. And it means that we have to train ourselves to see others in terms of the Echad, in terms of the one. And the way you can achieve that, how can I go and see someone else who I cannot stand his guts, frankly? How can I see him as Echad? And I believe the answer is by seeing yourself as Echad. If your own self-images, it's not about me. It's about my innermost essence. It's about the echad that's within me. That's who I'm talking about. That's what the whole of Judaism is about. It's about what Hashem wants. Hashem wants the world to be a dwelling place. He wants all of us to be right, to bring out our essence. When you start looking at yourself and define yourself in terms of your potential, not in terms of all the mistakes that you made, or all the weaknesses, or all the frustrated attempts and unfulfilled expectations of yourself and of others, all of this schmutz, get out of the way and just see echad, just see this is what it is. Myself, then you're able to look at the world in that way. And it's about today. It's about today being better than yesterday. Going out of Egypt is not only once a year. It's a daily activity. The Gemara says, the Talmud says, that when a person wakes up, he or she is like a block of wood. A bummer means a stage, a piece of wood. And when the person says Moda Ani, and the person gives a little bit of time and energy into davening, one realizes there's an echad there. And that moment is a moment of going out of Egypt. And in every different stage, in every encounter, and every opportunity that takes place in your day is an opportunity to go out of Egypt. Means not to take the road which says what is comfortable for me, but saying to yourself, what is the right thing? What does Hashem want? What does my innermost self want? That's what it's about. Now let's get the questions.
Can you share maybe something about Yud Aleph Nissan? Yud Aleph Nissan.
Yeah, what about it?
Maybe a little bit of the history of Yud Aleph Nissan from the 50s. Was it always a big day, always a day that everybody celebrated?
It was, everyone, the Hasidim celebrated, the Rebbe did not have any public Farbrengen until 1962 for his 60th birthday. And his 50th birthday, so here was the Rebbe at 49, turning 50, and he officially had taken the role a year earlier, unofficially 2 years earlier, unofficially 10 years, 11 years earlier when he came to America, because if you look at his letters, I look in the letters, he was in the middle of the Holocaust. He was building what he was saying in 1942 and what he was saying in 1992 are just a one long, like, with that goal, with that view, what does God want in the world? We're leading it to something. So on his 50th birthday, he called in a small group, probably a minyan, I don't know, and said a maimah, a Hasidic discourse. And that wasn't the whole Farbrengen, and there weren't talks, it was just the discourse, which is published. When it came towards the 60th, I was 22 years old then, in the yeshiva, in 770, and we were hoping, at least the maimah, 10 years ago he did it, you know, but we didn't know anything. It fell on a Sunday that year. And we didn't know through Shabbos, and Sunday, Motzi Shabbos, Saturday night, an announcement was made, the Rebbe's for bringing tomorrow. That was like, it was like a revelation. It was like, this is mamish. Mashiach is really on the way now. Coming to the home stretch. That's now. But then it was like, at least we get to first base. And the Rebbe came down to that Farbrengen. The Rebbe would come to a Farbrengen with no notes, no books, no anything, unless he was going to say l'chaim and have some cake. Then he came out with a siddur to say the bracha at the end. He always said it from inside. But here he came down not only with a siddur, he also came down with a Lekutei Sichos. It was the first time there was a bound volume of the Rebbe's talks, and it just came out that day. And they made 2 copies with a leather binding and a nice, like, place mark, one for the Rebbe, and one for the Rebbe's in Chana, the Rebbe's mother. And so I remember that as like, and the Rebbe said two Mamorim, two Hasidic discourses in the course of that Rebbein. Over the years, and then the next one was when the Rebbe was 69, 1971. But 72 was like monumental. Because in 72, the Rebbe became 70, and he said people are telling him, okay, you're 70 already, time to take it a bit easier. And the Rebbe said, what do you mean take it easier? After 70, the Gemara says, anyone who gets it to 80 shows Gevurah, strength. So now we got to go with more strength than before. We're now on the way to Gevurah. And therefore, this year, we're going to establish 71 new institutions. And believe me, 71 institutions in those days was equivalent to making 5,000 today in a year. And that's, I say literally because today there are 5,000 institutions. It means doubling. Then it meant more than doubling. There were shluchim to a certain amount, a few dozen. Most of them, or many of them, were just rabbis in different communities, not Chabad as such. The Rebbe's working materials when he started was just any Jew. That's it was from the beginning to the end. Every single person is important. Everyone has the echad. Use everyone for what they can do. So that began a series, and certainly from his 80th birthday in 1982, there was a very strong emphasis about education. And the presidents of the United States, all the presidents, signed the proclamation, and the houses of Congress, all those years, and to this day, by the way, in honor of the Rebbe's birthday, a day of education, and the Rebbe wrote letters thanking the presidents and to contemplate how we can do more for the next generation, for all people, not just Jews. And the Rebbe connected it, I'll just say one quick thought, with the idea of the Pesach Seder. This to me is an abiding memory of the talks about what is education. I teach Klal Chinuch from a Hasidic work, principles of education with our oldest class, 17, 18-year-old kids. And my first lesson I say, what is education? I say it's communication. And that means it's not only for children. Every human interaction is an opportunity to educate. But specifically, it's for the young. That's the next generation. And the Rebbe says that on Pesach, we fulfill the mitzvah. He said, what does it mean to be a parent? And it doesn't mean a person is childless. We're all parents of the next generation, or of each other. It's a relationship. There are two components. One is v'higadato levincha. That's the word Haggadah means to tell. Tell your child. It means communicating, speaking words of encouragement, words of example, words of Torah to your child or to your friend or to your spouse or to whoever it is. Make that part of your repertoire. To say, to talk, to say good things, positive things, spiritual things. And secondly, it's being a role model. Being a role model of what you expect of the other. And the Rebbe said that virtually every child looks up to their parents. And they say to themselves, wow, I'll never get what they are. But I hope I'll get to half of what they are. The child's goal is to be half as good or as capable as their parent. That's the nature. And the Rebbe said, whatever you want your child to be double that. So then when they go for half, that's where they'll go. So that's a little bit about Gidal Afnishim.
Rabbi,
Yes?
with the 2 points you just made,
Yes.
what's the chiddush there?
What's the
Meaning-
chiddush?
Yeah, meaning, you said the first part is to communicate. Does that insinuate that we don't wanna communicate with our kids? That's number one, I'm asking that. And number two, to be a role model, are we saying we don't wanna be a role model?
Excellent, excellent question. Your name must be Shmuel. Now, so, here we are. Number one, what's the chiddush? Let me ask you, how many parents turn off their mobile phone when the kids come home from school for the next 3 hours? That's what I call communicating. Not just being there. Look for opportunities. You're going out to get gas because you have a big trip tomorrow, take one of your kids with you. I'm talking about non-direct, I'm not just talking about sitting and learning Chumash with them. I'm talking about just relating to them, making them part of your life. Not asking yourself, what are they doing for me? But thinking, what can I do to talk to them, to communicate with them? And as far as the role modeling is concerned, there's a saying, they say, do as I say, not as I do. It means not just being a perfect person. It means being an example of being an imperfect person. Showing your child that you're also trying to learn and to learn from your mistakes. And maybe I did this, I could have done better here. Instead of thinking that I'm perfect, that in itself. Well, every single midah, every single characteristic can be experienced and expressed in countless ways.
I have a question.
Yes, speak up. I can take care of myself. You listen good and then you can say it over. Yeah, you're fine.
I enjoyed your stories and you tied them together beautifully. When you said about when Mashiach comes, it made me think. You said that it's going to be easier for everyone to do the mitzvahs. We'll innately want to do them. But I started to think, will that make, when Mashiach comes, what is our belief? Are all Jews going to become frum? Are there still going to be all types of Jews?
A, all Jews will become frum. B, all non-Jews will become frum. C, it sounds like a pretty boring existence. I was once learning a chapter in Tanya, it's chapter 27, if you look into it, where it speaks about the tremendous value of overcoming one's desires and doing what's right, even when you're not in the mood. It's called iskafia, that's the word. And how that, in a sense, that's greater than even being a tzaddik, who's doing what's natural, doing what comes naturally. So a girl in the class asked me, does that mean that being a tzaddik is a boring life? There's no challenge, no nothing. So what I said was that the tzaddik is a different type of a challenge. For example, they're trying to get you to see the values and to see the truth. That's a big challenge to teach your children or your students or whoever it is, knowing how to do it without breaking the glass. I remember a story when I was a yeshiva bacher. This was back 65 plus years ago in Montreal. And I ate at this house on Shabbos, the Minkowitz's. And the mother told me that her 2-year-old, 3-year-old daughter, she came in one day, they lived on the second floor, and she was standing on the windowsill with an open window, just standing there. She said, what do you think I did? And I was like a 19-year-old boy. I said, you screamed, Yeah. She said, I screamed, you're gonna fall out. I said, what did you do? She was like a Russian Hasidic. She said, I said, Chanele, willst du Stickel chocolate? And Chanele came off the windowsill, and then maybe she screamed, I don't know. That's not part of the story. I told that story to the girl. I said, a tzaddik He's looking at us like the kids on the windowsill. They don't even understand what's flying. Now, when Mashiach comes, really, the Hasidic discourse that I studied this morning, before I read the letter, says that that's why when Mashiach comes, we're still going to mention, like in the days of going out of Egypt, we're going to appreciate, and therefore we're going to look to grow not only in the ways and in the direction that suits our current fancy and our current interest and comfort zone, but even then, we're going to try to do something which goes above and beyond for Hashem. Does that answer your question?
You know, Rabbi, you've had many yechidises with the Rebbe. You've had many yechidises with the Rebbe. Can you give us one? They were all special, I'm sure. Can you give us one moment that you had with the yechidus with the Rebbe that you can share with us?
Okay. I'll share it with you, one of them. I was in Yechidus 29 times plus one. The one is it was Yud Aleph Nissan on the Rebbe's 70th birthday, but it was with a group from England. And I'm going to share with you one that happened in 1974, nearly 50 years ago. It was the day after Simchas Torah. It was a Thursday night. It was after the most physically demanding week of the year for everyone, especially for the Rebbe. The talks, all the things he did. And it was Thursday night before the most demanding Shabbos of the whole year, Shabbos Bereshis. And the Rebbe had hundreds of people coming in that night, and he was going to be there the whole night seeing people. But I was there with my 5-year-old son, he just turned 5. So I got it early, maybe 10 o'clock at night. I personally was in Yechidus sometimes at 4 and at 6 a.m. Never sat the whole night, was fresh as if you just about ready for breakfast. Now, so I thought this Yechidus is going to be approximately between 1 and 2 minutes. I wrote one line, you write a note, and I said, please give me a blessing for myself and my family. I signed it, and I gave it to the Rebbe. And it turned out that was one of the longest audiences I ever had with the Rebbe. And he brought up things which looked like they're from left field. About students, female students to light candles for Shabbos. All months I was working then, my main work was with campus. But I wanted to share with you one of those little mini conversations in that Yechidus. I don't call it a conversation, I call it a connection. Anyway, so the Rebbe asked me, did you hear lately from so-and-so, Mr. X, we call him. This Mr. X is like somebody head of the Federation, that type of thing, from the Jewish community. It wasn't my scene. My scene was students, young people. You know, I knew it, but I think he knew me, but we didn't really. But it happened to be that a couple of weeks before that, I was on the airport and I met Rabbi Bernhardt from South Africa, who told me he had breakfast with Mr. X. And that Mr. X criticized the Rebbe vehemently about his stance on who is a Jew. And he said he's wrong. It was a very, very, he said it was so vehement, he said, I decided right away not to enter the discussion and tell him he's wrong. Because there was no way I would change him. So what I said to him, this is a rabbi, a very hush of a rabbi from South Africa. He said, I told him, I totally disagree with you, but let's change the subject. I told this one to the Rebbe. I told this to the Rebbe. I figured Rebbe asked me, did you hear from him lately? Which the whole question was not the type of question that Rebbe would normally ask me. And then the Rebbe tells me something which from any other of the 5 billion people in the world would seem defensive almost. The Rebbe said, do you know why he said that? Because somebody slandered me. Somebody told him against me a lashon hara, or a Moitzi Shema. Lashon Hara is a negative thing about a fellow, even if it's true. It's called Lashon Hara. It's a very big sin. But Moitzi Shemra is something which is not even true. So the Rebbe said somebody told him against me a Lashon Hara, maybe even a Moitzi Shemra, namely that I attacked him in my public talks. In other words, the Rebbe didn't agree with him about who was a Jew, probably. And the Rebbe said, Ich red nicht wegen Menschen, ich red wegen Shittas. He said it in Yiddish. I don't speak about people. I speak about ideas. In other words, if I disagreed with him, I never mentioned my name or anything. I spoke about a certain idea, that this is what the Torah says. While the Rebbe is saying this, I'm standing there like a soldier,
With your 5-year-old.
listening to the Rebbe, and I was like bowled over. I said to myself, the whole thing I said to myself was a half a second. 1/2 of a second. But in that half a second, I said to myself, this is the greatest Jew in the world, the greatest man in the world. The one who picked up the Jewish people from the Holocaust. The biggest builder of buildings, publisher of publishings, educator, activist, encourager. It's all in a half a second. But at the end of the day, he's also your best personal friend that you could want. The second half of that second, I said, when I get back to England, I'm going to make an appointment and I'm going to set Mr. X straight. As I'm thinking this, it's all that 1 second, Deborah said, not a good idea for you to go and speak to him and tell him what we just spoke about. Unfortunately, I was a wise guy, right, in my mind. It was, well, the next half a second, I said to myself, I'll get Rabbi Vogel, a senior colleague, who was close to this man, I'll get him to go. And this was 2 seconds. And Deborah says, also not a good idea for you to ask someone else of another Lubavitcher to go to him. Deborah said, if the man came to me himself, I could set him straight. But the main thing is this: the important reason I'm sharing it with you is for the next sentence, which is a direction in life. The next thing that Deborah said, the important thing is to remember. This is all in Yiddish. There are 613 commandments in the Torah. Who is a Jew is one of them. If this man does not want to cooperate with Chabad on who is a Jew, let's work with him on the other 612.
Wow.
That's powerful. In community, in marriage, in parenting, in business, in anything you want, social life, look for what unites you. Just a few weeks ago, somebody was in my house and they said some kind of criticism of so-and-so, whatever. They didn't say, just laugh. It was just, I said, that person has 1,000 good points. And let's try to look for those and work with those. That's how life works. Life works by seeking out that which unites us, the echad that's in everybody. And that's how we're going to bring Mashiach.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Now that my coffee had a chance to warm up a bit.
What else can we get you to eat, Rabbi? You want some oatmeal? You want something else?